Be willing to be a beginner every morning. Meister Eckhart. Bending, Not Breaking. Season 6, Episode 1. Breath of Fresh Air. Welcome back to another season of Bending, Not Breaking.
That's right.
Another season. We're in season 3. This is such a good time.
Season 6 of the podcast.
Season 3 of Legend of Korra, and it's exciting.
It's wild.
One of my favorite seasons.
Yeah, this is
it's up there.
Pretty widely regarded as fandom's favorite season of Korra.
It might be my favorite. Yeah, yes, that seems to be.
Based off of my extensive interactions with fandom.
Yeah.
Which I would say is, it is.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of fans.
Yeah.
We've talked to fans of the show before.
Also observed a lot of fans.
Yep. No, this arguably is, I think, before rewatch, my favorite season of Avatar.
Yeah.
Like, of the Avatar universe.
Having not seen the whole thing through for a while, part of me is like, I really love season 1 of Korra. I really love season 2 of Korra.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the whole Kuvira arc. I really love seasons 2 and 3 of Atlas. Season 1 has a lot to grapple with, but still very good. And so, like, I don't know if this is, I don't know. I don't remember where this ranks on my list, honestly.
Yeah, I think that I love season 2 of Atla probably the most out of that 3, and I think I love season 3 the most of this show, and I think I like season 3 a little bit more. But I'm more familiar with season 2 and of Atla. Yeah. We've spent a lot of time both in our live episodes with patrons and doing the whole first 3 seasons of the show. We've spent a lot of time with Atla and very little time with Korra.
We're approaching the same.
We're getting
I guess they
there.
are longer seasons of Atla, aren't they? So,
well, I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm so happy.
Quote we went with: be willing to be a beginner every morning.
Yeah, it's like we're starting a new season. It's like we're beginning a new
season of the show, of the podcast. A lot of beginnings.
Yeah.
Happening.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Yeah.
So we picked beginnings as the lens.
Yeah.
What is that? And I think maybe we know what it is. Maybe we know what beginnings are. What does it make you think of, maybe, as you're watching a show like this?
Yeah, I mean, the definition is very clinical.
The definition is very much the point in time or space where something starts.
Yep. Right.
But it can be an origin story.
It can.
It can be it can very much be like the start of a process, right? Like, we know these things, or we have an idea around beginnings. We've experienced them in our lives, but what does it make you think of?
Yeah. So,
or feel.
I often, like, when I'm, like, at the beginning of something, I'm nervous, often.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how like, this is my brain. I'm thinking about, but all of these things could go wrong. At the beginning of something, I sometimes am really excited. we're about to do it. This is going to be great. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be great. And, and there's a lot of anticipatory feelings when it comes to beginning, right? Good or not so good. Yeah.
When I think that sometimes those feelings manifest from a place of, do we have past experience with something similar? Do we have past experience doing this thing before? Was it a good experience? Was it a negative experience, right? Like, the role that our past experiences play on the start of something new. This is the start of something new.
I was about to take it. I'm glad you blocked
so
there.
Right to be here with you. Oh, right. So our past experiences kind of really affect the way that we approach those new things. I think of, like, having to introduce myself to someone for the first time. Depending on the situation, is this a networking event? Is this a donor event? Or is this a party, right? Like, those things are going to drastically shift my comfort level and maybe enthusiasm around participating in that type of thing.
Yeah, I think our prior experience is necessarily going to color our experience of what's coming, right? Our past influences the way we experience our present and the way we anticipate our future, right?
Which is one of those things that's like we say that and we go, well, duh. But in moments,
we forget
how
that.
often do we forget that? Or when someone else is experiencing something or behaving a certain way, we completely throw that aspect out the window, that maybe their past experiences have led them to a certain point, and we are ignoring awareness around that, right?
Yeah, I feel like oftentimes it's look at how much insight this gives me into why I feel a certain way. It's like in the afterthought. You're able to hindsight, analyze, and think about it. But when you're in the moment and you're like, oh man,
involuntary body response.
All we have, and that's what our bodies do. That is, there's a stimulus, and then there is a response, and often there is very little space between. But the space between stimulus and response is where all the magic happens. It's where our humanity rests, right? That's where our values have the opportunity to make a statement. Is in the space between stimulus and response.
And I feel like, right, so there's the concept in sports between like muscle memory, right? Or,
yeah.
And so, you do things enough over and over again. And so that's where we talk about like this awareness piece that we've always lifted up.
Yep.
Or when we process these things afterward, that allows us to either, one, make that space between become muscle memory into our values.
Yes.
Or even grow the time of the space between stimulus and reaction to give you the ability to kind of think through things. But yeah, sometimes it's just that gut reaction.
Well, and when we judge other people for their response to stimuli, and we are like, oh my God, they're just the worst. What we're forgetting is how much their past is playing a role.
You're ignoring the humanity.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think our calling from that is to, especially when we are thinking about beginnings, when we are meeting new people, when we are in thinking about people in spaces that are new to them, I think it's important to remember that, hey, we have no idea what is coloring their picture right now. And it would be helpful if we were generous. Right? Generous with our assumptions. It's like we keep on coming back to that concept.
It's an important one. There are like base concepts that we have on this show that I think are lasting.
Yeah, well, and I would love. Part of me wants somebody to like go back and listen and find like they've said this thing 17 times.
Yeah. In 60 episodes, they hit this mark.
Yeah.
43 times.
Yeah, I think that would be one of them.
Generous assumptions would be, absolutely.
Yeah.
Reasonable amount of time on the front end to avoid an unreasonable amount of time on the back end would be another one.
And then just awareness.
Awareness
right?
would be one.
Cultivating awareness, right? So I think we're doing pretty well with beginnings, giving us the opportunity to talk about our favorite things.
Yeah. Love talking about our favorite things. Raindrops on roses. Whiskers on kittens.
Yeah. Speaking of beginnings, we're looking forward to the rest of the season, and we have got some great guests coming on this season, and I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Several you've heard before.
Some you haven't.
Some you haven't.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I just wanted to put that out there and have you anticipating what might come along.
Anticipatory feelings towards this new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're talking about beginnings. We're talking about Season 3, Episode 1.
Breath of fresh air. But before we jump into the episode, Ben, you have 30 seconds on the clock.
I think it's rude that you put me on the recap first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your mark, get set, go!
Okay, so after harmonic convergence, Korra's like, oh my god, spirit vines everywhere! And they've taken over the city, and then, she's struggling, and then President Raiko blames her for all the problems that are going on, and he's a big jerk. And then, the biggest deal is that Boomy's an airbender! And then there are airbenders like everywhere, and then popping up across the world, and they're causing trouble for the city.
15
And then
seconds.
this guy like it was wild, and then he's all about to jump off a bridge because he can't do anything else. And then Raiko's like, leave the city
5.
to Korra, and then opportunity to travel the world with. And then Zahir makes his debut with uncanny airbending
Done.
abilities.
That was fast.
I did my best.
30 seconds goes real quick.
It does go by so fast. Yeah,
What a show. Lots to talk about, specifically in the realms of beginnings.
for sure. Absolutely.
What's one of the first moments for you?
Okay, so I want to go to Boomy first.
Okay, yeah. The episode starts there. Why not us start there?
I think it's poignant that we follow suit. So this is a big moment. Boomy's
Gone his entire life.
yeah.
Without this thing.
And I think it's important to think about how the past colors the present. I think
Literally pushing your glasses up on your face.
I really think it's important to think about Boomy's childhood right now.
Being the only non-bender
Boomy was
growing
the
up.
oldest child.
Yeah.
He was the firstborn of Aang and Kantara, two of the most well-known benders in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a bender.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got chills thinking about being that child, right?
So hard. On top of being the oldest.
On top
right?
of being the oldest, who is theoretically supposed to be the one who takes care of everybody else. And then I totally don't buy into, sibling theory, but there's something to be said for being the oldest and wanting to take care of.
Yeah, Boomy gives me real youngest child energy.
Yes, and I think it's because he's the non-bender of the family.
Right.
Right? And so I think there's a reason that Tenzin is the one who got most of that energy as the only airbender.
You have to protect this thing.
Exactly. And I think the weight of that landed on him rather than on Boomy. That being said, I want to go back to Boomy's childhood, where as soon as Kaya was born and her bending abilities manifested, Boomy was probably feeling a certain kind of way, right? Being in a family of benders, and he's the only one not. And then Tenzin comes along, and then finally there's an airbender. And the amount of love and time and energy that Aang spent with Tenzin that made Boomy feel a certain kind of way. So this moment when Boomy airbends, to me, is probably very shocking for him. And there's a reason he runs back, and he is, he's going wild.
He's wanted this, right? Like we see moments of him. I hope I made you proud, Dad. Like we see and so to have this thing that is now a new connection piece for him to his family, to his father, who he is craving support and pride from,
acceptance and love and nurturance, right? He wants all these things,
and so this is a connection piece to that. And I think one of the things that really is inspiring about Boomy in this moment is this idea of taking on this new thing at when later in life, and being so excited about it, and finding something new to be a part of, and being like, I'm in. And I think that cliche, corny as it sounds, like finding things that excite you in life, like there's beauty in that.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
That's a sacred moment.
I think that ultimately there's so many people who would say that that's a rare moment, right? Is to find something that is super exciting, especially as you're getting to this place where like you might be feeling like you're stuck in a rut or stuck doing the same thing or in the same job or in the same movements over and over again. And so to find something like this that's exciting and new is really powerful.
Well, and I think the most, like, I want to cry when Boomy says, "Wait till I tell Mom."
Yeah.
That moment, I just got chills. Like, that moment is so big. He just ran and told Tenzin, Kaya's there. They all saw this, but then his response in that moment is, "Wait till I tell Mom."
And can we think the other person on in this moment that I really love is Milo.
Yeah.
Because when everyone else is like, "No, like we're not doing this," like
not playing
Milo
along.
is the only one who's like, "No, like,
all right,
let's foster this." And it's unintentional for Milo, right? Like he's just like, "I'm gonna throw food because I like to throw food." And it turns into something beautiful. And I really appreciate Milo's ability to just say, like, let's just try it. Let's do it. Let's give in to this excitement.
And I think that happens for us. We get jaded, right? All of a sudden, we've spent our whole life. Like, imagine the amount of times Boomy as a child was like, "Hey, y'all, look at this," right? And then pretended to bend,
Well,
right? As like, because
yeah.
you imagine all the playtime they probably had where he was trying and pretending to be a bender and fantasizing about this moment,
Mhm.
and then to finally have it happen again. Like, I just imagine my childhood
Yeah.
with siblings where I don't have the abilities that they do, and then I do.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much emotion wrapped up in that.
100%. And so this ability to foster that excitement
Milo's
is
the
yeah,
bomb.com.
Milo does it. And again, it might have been unintentional, but he does it in a way that it's one, it proves like I can do this. This is something fun and exciting and new. But how often do we have someone come up to us at work and say, "Hey, I want to try this thing," and our response is, "Oh, we did that. We tried to do that 2 years ago. We tried to do that 3 years ago, and it didn't work. So we're not going to do it." And the reality is, a lot of times, some things don't work because the right person isn't doing that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like if yeah, we have a lot of programs that work with teens in our organization, and some people are jazzed about doing that work, and some people
Me.
aren't. And you can tell the difference between the teen programs where the people who are leading it are doing it because they think like, oh, it's a service we're providing, versus the people who are doing it that are like, I'm putting my all into this because it's what I love to do.
Yeah.
And the program differences are vast.
Yeah.
And so sometimes something you can sit there and be like, oh, that wouldn't work, or no, that's not going to go the right way. And sometimes when someone is excited about doing it and we think there's a way that they can maybe bring something to the table, like foster that excitement.
Yeah.
And if it fails, it fails.
It reminds me of Good to Great, which is the only takeaway from Good to Great that I recall.
It's not one of my favorite books.
It's not great.
There are other ones out there.
But I the only takeaway that I remember from that is get the right people on the bus.
Right.
Right? And that's a part of it. It's like, I would rather have the right people on the bus than have a bus that is, chock filled with money or chock filled with X, Y, or Z, because the right people can make sure everything's going to go well versus not having the right people, but doing and filling the positions for other reasons. And so that kind of what I'm reminded of just in that moment. But yeah, I again, just why, let me ask you this. What's the reason we do that? Why do we shut people down? Like, let's give a generous assumption there. What is the reason people do that?
Yeah. So I've been in that boat before, and in the times that I've done it, it's because I feel like I'm saving time and energy and effort that is going to be misplaced.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's about...
So sometimes, someone's doing something, and I'm like, we did that a few years ago. I get that you're excited about it, but, like, it is a dead end. I don't want you to waste 40 hours of your time, 80 hours of your time doing something that is going to inevitably be unproductive.
Especially when you're a supervisor and you see all the other gaps in programs that you're like, you could be focusing your energy on all of these things.
Or this might be a better way to move forward, right? And so the question then becomes like, how do we foster this excitement? Is this truly a dead end? Are we willing to give 40 hours, 80 hours of time to let them explore this thing if it's going to create excitement in the work that they're doing? And are there other benefits that maybe aren't directly revenue driven? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes I'm going to let you do this thing because you're excited about it and there's a point to it and you feel like it's going to work, and maybe it doesn't, but you're going to learn something from it. And sometimes that's the value in doing that thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be, well, that didn't generate money, right? So
yeah.
There's definitely points to that. But yeah, I think for me, the times where I've done that, it has been like I'm saving you time is like my vision of.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what Tenzin's feeling in this moment.
No.
So what's a generous assumption of Tenzin's like wanting to shut this down? It seems like he's frustrated that Boomy. It does seem like almost like a wasting time could be there.
But could it also be like the feeling of being mocked? Like, could it be the feeling of mocking something that is sacred?
Well, you got to think that this is probably not the first time that Boomy has done this,
but probably as an adult, right?
Yeah,
probably as an adult.
Sure.
But maybe not, right? We know Boomy's character.
Boomy's
Is there
known
a
for
chance
like
where he's
wild
like
stories
done
and
one
all
of those
these
things where
right?
I think of the time where they make Momo lift the rock.
In Atla.
And like, has there been a time where Boomy's convinced Milo to do something similar so that like he can look like he's pushing a boulder?
That'd be funny. Yeah.
And so there's I believe there's probably been times that something like that
Yeah.
has happened. So there is probably a little bit of that boy who cried wolf mentality, but
Yeah.
but I also think that like this is something very serious to Tenzin. He would love for the Air Nation to grow, but if he feels like he's being mocked in the moment,
I also want to get to the point with people that I love and cherish of really thinking about the filter through which I make the decision that somebody's being serious or not. Because with people that are silly and make jokes a lot and do all kinds of things like that, I love that. That's the energy that I like. I really love that energy, and it makes me sad to think that I might be that person that shuts it down because it happens too much. Like why? Like, and I could totally. I'm also the type of person that would be like, no, this is. I've heard this joke. It's not funny anymore.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm totally the type of person that would say that. Right. And so I'm really kind of thinking about how do I go back to this quote that you offered us, which is how do I keep a beginner's mind and really give people a chance to start over rather than hold them accountable their entire lives for a mistake they made when they were 10.
Well, and there's a small moment with Tenzin in this section that I highlighted in my notes, and it's notice the way that when Iki calls for him, his immediate reaction coming into this new beginning experience.
Yeah.
And it's immediately, wait, what's wrong? What's going on?
Yep.
And maybe that's because of the way that Iki called for him, but that's already his mindset. And so my question is, when we get called into a new experience, what is our mindset at the very beginning? And how do we either challenge that or foster it?
Yeah, and and I think that's a lesson for Iki too, right? Is
when
I call somebody this way,
space,
right?
Yeah.
It's likely to create that response, right? I don't want. I didn't mean to worry you. I just wanted you to come.
Every time my parents text me in all caps, call me now, right? And you're like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, just wanted to chat. And we're like, yeah, you could have texted that differently.
that usually means someone's going to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's important. But yeah, I think.
Which then alludes to the fact of making sure people have the skills of like navigating social constructs and like how to call, right? That's an ability issue.
It goes back to stimulus and response, right? And the pause between stimulus and response.
Yeah.
Right? There was no pause. Tenzin ran. He ran. Right? That was pure. That was
what's
very
going on? What's wrong?
Instinctual. Very that was. Yes.
Which is I mean, it's one of those things too of he's a protector of his family, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've seen him grow in the way that he trains and coaches and talks to. Even in this episode, the meditation moment where he's dropping life lessons.
That moment.
Love that moment.
Yeah. I was just that's exactly what Korra needed to hear.
Oh my goodness.
To me, like it felt exactly what I wanted her to hear.
But I just, but the way he shows up in those things to me is always just like he's getting better, right? Like he's clearly checking his biases and like, and learning how to approach situations. I don't know he would approach that situation in season 1 the same way.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And I love this quote. Get it tattooed on y'all somewhere, but true wisdom begins when we accept things as they are. Like, I
probably won't get that tattooed, but I do like it.
No, I'm not one for tattooing quotes. That's not my style, but
except for the quote on your shoulder.
That's the only one. It just says be well and do good. It's a very simple.
You also have
that one.
A lyric, don't you?
Yeah.
Isn't that a quote?
It's one of my least favorite tattoos. It's
kind
probably
of
my least favorite tattoo.
Yeah. Anyway.
So I've stopped getting quotes.
So counsel from somebody who has experience.
They don't look great. They're my least favorite ones. But I love that quote. True wisdom begins when we accept things as they are. And I think that is, you're not immediately trying to change things. You're accepting and finding a starting point of this is where we're at, being honest with yourself of where you are and how we move forward. And but again, the way he approaches that situation is very different than he would have done in season 1. And I love that.
And I think that is not to say that accepting where you are means it is going to stay that way.
No, and because a lot of times when we talk about acceptance of people, of a person coming into a space that's new, we say we want people to show up authentically as themselves.
Yep.
And be there and know that they are loved and worthy of love. That is a baseline. That doesn't mean that there isn't growth that needs to take place, because ideally we're all growing, but it means growing in a way that is authentic, right? Like, that is not, I'm not shoving myself into something that I'm not, but it is learning and growing and developing and doing this in a way that feels correct. And so I think it's a similar concept of, like, accepting things as they are doesn't mean that change isn't going to happen. And the reality is, change is going to happen.
Period.
It just means you're realistic with what the starting place is.
And I think that's the key, is the awareness. And I think that's accepting things as they are means you're
buzzer or
you're
bell
aware,
every time we say awareness.
Right? You're aware of what's going on, which means if you are, trying to be an activist in the world and you haven't accepted the fact that there is rampant racism in our country, then there's a little bit of wisdom missing there,
well,
right?
You and Ben and I both watched Survivor.
Oh yeah, season 42.
Regularly.
Yeah, we just finished season 42.
Just finished season 42. Fantastic.
Great.
There's a
great
moment.
Season.
There's a moment in this season that I think is uncannily, like, representative of people, of us included, whether it is about the subject that was being discussed in this moment. But someone lifts up the fact that it's like there may be unconscious racism going on in this show. And a guy goes, I'm not racist. I would know if I was racist. And you're like, that's...
Hold on.
That's,
you literally don't understand,
like, that's the
of subconscious bias.
Right? And so, like, I think that was those moments that we all have that playing in us. And there's a defensiveness that sometimes comes up of, I would know if I'm not doing this. I would know if I was doing this. And the reality is, like, no. That's what the whole point is, that you don't. Yeah. And so it is, how do we bring the subconscious into the conscious?
Yeah.
Conscious. And it's a very real feeling, I think, for so many things, whether we're talking about unchecked misogyny, racism, any oppression of a marginalized group, any way that we're approaching situations. Sometimes we get defensive when someone says, hey, you may not have known that you did this, but when you said this little thing, it made me feel this way. No, it didn't. That's not how I said it. And you're like, you don't...
There is a space between stimulus and response.
Exactly.
And I am just cautioning you to use that space and use that pause to change your answer.
And that's always one of those things where it's like, I don't need you to necessarily change your behavior. If you have thought about it and decide that your behavior is okay, that is a choice you get to make.
But it also gives me the opportunity to say, I don't need that in my life.
Correct.
And I can set boundaries that are honest and true.
But at least start at asking the question. You want a starting place, at least ask the question.
Yeah.
Where the new Kenobi shows come out. And Ben, you haven't watched any of it, but there are 2 characters in it.
Not.
Moses Ingram plays an Inquisitor named Reva.
The Inquisitor.
And in my opinion, she's been just pitch perfect the entire time. And people get...
Lots of singing?
No, just with her performance. Not a literal
So
pitch.
not monotone?
Not monotone. Very... uses the emotions. She's been great. And she, there's not a lot of spoilers in here, but minor Kenobi spoilers, so jump ahead 30 seconds if you need to. She really wants to capture Kenobi and is really driven on doing this to the point where even her peers are like, give it up. And people are starting to complain like, oh, what a one-dimensional character, and poor performance, and that's so annoying that her only drive is Kenobi. And I'm like, y'all watched 7 seasons of the Clone Wars and the Phantom Menace where, like, that was all Darth Maul was doing. And you love Darth Maul.
Yep.
And so all I need you to do in this moment is identify the difference between those 2 characters and why do you love one and why do you hate the other.
Yep.
That's it. There's also, a young Leia that shows up and people are like, oh, super annoying, too smart, Alec, too smart for her own good. I'm like, y'all didn't care when Anakin, as an 8-year-old, destroyed an entire droid army while flying a plane that he's never flown before.
Oh, it's so out of his ability.
So, like, again, what's the difference? And ask yourself the question. I just need you to ask the question. If you come to the conclusion,
I want more than that,
like,
right?
ideally, yes, but like starting point, the beginning is
the awareness.
Ask the question.
That you
and if you land in the same place, then like, whatever. I think you're wrong. But if you land in the same place, fine. But at least start asking the question.
It's this concept of if I need to start understanding where these flags are in my own behavior.
Correct.
Right, and not calling them red yet.
They're just flags.
They're calling them flags.
It is this happened, and so I need to process whether or not I feel good about the way I'm about to handle this situation, or am I handling it. And I think that happens, right? This is all right. Someone just asked me to do this thing. I immediately feel my body tense up. Why?
Yep.
Like, that's it.
Why? There is a space between stimulus and response.
Is my body allowed to be tense? Am I allowed to be angry in this moment? And the answer might be yes. And the answer might be, am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I
scared?
Am I annoyed? Why am I annoyed?
Yep.
Right? Like, just do those things.
And I am not great at it often. That doesn't mean that I am not actively working on it constantly, right? And I get reminded very often when I mess up. And it's really helpful to have people in your life that know and can also help you work through this, because doing this in a silo doesn't work either. You have to do this in community.
Yeah.
Right? You have to do this with people that can call you out. And thank goodness you and I have done this work together for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been living together for so long, because I think that we have, because of that shared language, been able to call each other out in a helpful way. And I think that that's something that I really value.
Like, there's a moment in the show where, Mako maybe gets a moment like that.
Sure does. Yeah.
I really need to focus on work. I need to live at the police station and focus on my work. Why?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Tell us more.
Tell us more, Mako. Ask yourself the question. Why?
Yeah.
Oh, I really need to focus on work. Great. Why?
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done. Okay. Why do you have this feeling now? And you didn't have it a week ago, right? So, like, he's not a big part of this episode, but, like, he's now experiencing maybe a new thing where he feels like he's made two girls very upset with him. And so he is now trying to navigate this new concept of, like, how do I live into this space?
Speaking of our two lovely ladies,
they're the best.
Can we talk about those two for a minute?
Learning how to drive a car.
Yeah.
What a new thing. What a new and exciting thing.
What a new beginning. But also, it feels like it's the beginning of a more explicit appreciation of each other.
Yeah. Because it was very surface level in the first season.
First two seasons, really.
They get very little time together in the second season.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a moment where they are starting, so Korra and Asami are starting to spend more time together and appreciate each other's friendship. And I just love that. Love that a lot. It's very pretty.
Yeah.
I love them both.
It's such a cool moment, and I think it's cool for a lot of reasons. One, yes, we get to start seeing this relationship blossom, and we're all here for it.
Blossom!
But also, I think it shows when you're starting on the path of something new, how helpful it can be when you have a connection piece, when you have someone there doing it with you.
Yeah.
Even if they've already done it before, like, that's super helpful. But even if they haven't, just sometimes having someone experience it with you is always a benefit. We see that in this moment. And we see that when Korra is willing to invite in the shopkeeper's brother who's sitting on the side of a bridge.
Yeah.
And she's like, come do this thing with me. Come be in community with us. Yeah,
the invitation in, right? Everybody else is trying to discipline him.
There's this
in this
new
moment.
And scary thing. And, like, because we can talk about that, like, the newness of either a new ability or a new job or a new experience in the fear of causing harm. The fear of not knowing what's going on and having someone there just bring you back into it is a really cool thing.
Yeah, can we just appreciate the wisdom that Korra has as she begins this conversation with this airbender, this new airbender on the top of the bridge?
I love one of the things that she does that I think is incredibly important. Whether you're talking, and to me, this is something that's important whether you're talking to kids or adults. But she doesn't blow smoke. Take away my bending. I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. This is
Don't
new.
lie.
Right.
Right?
And I think we often do that with children, right?
Sure. Okay.
Oh,
Totally.
yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And the reality is, it is so much easier for like, no, that is not possible.
Kids are smarter than
But
we think
here
they
is
are.
what is possible.
So are adults.
Yeah. And so I think that that's a very, I love that she sets the boundary of, no, I can't do that. You got to live with this. It may go away, but like, as of now, you've got to live with it. And I think that that's a really important thing to do. But she follows that up with, but you can live with that with us. And I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, I love, my favorite part of that interaction was he's going through all the feelings of, I don't know how to, and
Yeah.
she's like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing that in my own life, and she is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just this level of empathy that is between their connection that just feels really, really beautiful. That I think ultimately is what helps him trust her a little bit more, also.
Because she believes him, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's something that
And there's vulnerability in that.
and I think that's the thing is there's, as more research has happened, and especially by one of our favorite researchers, Brene Brown, one of her most recent concepts that she's lifted up is like, you can empathize, but you can never truly know the experience. Like the ability to walk in someone's shoes for a mile is not really a thing.
Correct.
You can empathize. You can connect emotions that you've had in your past with emotions they're going through. You maybe have even gone through the exact same experience before, in which case you can somewhat have that experience. But when someone tells you about their experience or shares what is happening with them,
You still don't know.
you don't really know. You believe them, right?
That's right.
And so she's there believing him on all of these feelings and all of these things that he's saying. And she's just there in it with him. And I love that.
Yeah.
Really cool
And I think
moment.
that just goes to the thinking about beginning of relationships and beginnings of whenever you meet new people, like listen.
And recognize that like there are some things that you might love, this new experience, going into a new job.
Yeah.
If you feel equipped to do it, you might love it. If you don't, you might feel like you might cause harm, like you might hurt someone, you might do things poorly. There's a lot of fear of failure in this episode.
Yeah.
As a new thing. This is new. I've never had to deal with vines crawling through
That's where I want to go
cityscapes.
next, is talking about all these vines and
Right.
and
So like
this
I've never had to
relationship.
deal with this before, and so there's a fear. And are they going to cause harm? Are we going to see them topple a building full of people? Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think our response to that fear is really something we can pick apart based off of this episode too. Like there has been a massive change. This is a new beginning for Republic City, right? And the leadership, be it Korra and or Raiko, who are both leaders in this Republic City, are responding to this very differently, right? And
it's very real and feels very poignant to like
yes,
go through because it seems super relevant.
it seems very relevant,
Right.
right?
This idea of who's wanting to go back to the way things were
Yes.
and who's wanting to approach and live with the way things are, Tenzin quote.
Yeah.
And how we go through that. I love that Janora early on is like, why do you want to, you've changed the world.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to go back?
Yeah.
And yes. Right?
You made this decision for a
Why do you want to go
reason,
back
right?
to what was normal when you've moved in this direction? How do we live with what is here? Janora sees that early on. Now we know her connection to the spirits is like stronger than most,
Yeah.
but just that mentality of how do we make this work?
And it's just the impulse for humanity to encounter change and be like, no, let's go back. Everything was more comfortable back where I was.
When sometimes it's not even that comfortable, right?
Correct.
Right? That's the rabbit in the briar patch.
But it's like a fallacy that we convince ourselves of
that was more
that was more comfortable and that it was better before this, right? And that is a huge impulse. And I feel like we talked about this on the first episode of season 2 when we talked about normalcy, right? This urge to return to normal is the same thing that we're talking about here. It's the return to comfort that we think we thought we had.
And there's a line in this that like highlights this. There's a line in this episode. President Ryko.
Jerk. In my humble opinion.
In this moment. There's a vine going through my office.
Yep.
Of course I want these vines gone. It's very much highlighted of like better for who.
Exactly.
Right? Who's it better for?
Such a good point.
Like, who's it better for?
Not the spirits.
Yeah.
No, it is.
And so I think that's one of those things where, and you know, it's better for the people in power. Is it truly better, or is it better for the people who held power in those moments?
Yeah.
Right? I wish it was like the 60s where you could just live in your home and leave the door unlocked and everyone loved the country and like
people who
better,
had homes.
better for who, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the important question in this moment.
Better for who?
Is who's it actually better for? And so when we're approaching this beginning a new thing, one of the other things I really love about this is we see Korra use past experience to try to solve a problem that she's approaching.
Yeah.
And I love that. Because, again, failure is not failure, right? Maybe that's a weird thing to start to unpack. We, a lot of times, think of failure as the end. I've lost. It's over. I've quit. I failed, right? It's this finite thing as opposed to what failure really can be, which is a tool, right? It's a process of elimination. It's moving forward and learning new things to get to the right solution.
Well, if you think about failure by definition, right, what happens is failure ceases to become failure as soon as you've learned anything from it.
Right.
It literally cannot be failure by definition. And so I think that that's something to really keep in mind is that failure transforms when we appreciate what we can gain from it, right? It ceases to become failure, literally. And so I think that's really important.
One of the most common trends in knowledge that I've, over my years of working with staff and bringing new people into a situation, is one of the biggest fears that people experience is the fear of failure, the fear of not doing their job well. The fear of not doing their job well. And giving people permission to mess up, to fail at something,
and meaning it,
has been one of the most transformational things I've seen with the people that I work with. When you tell someone, try it.
Do it better next
time. If it bombs, okay. But you want to try it, try it. Do it. And as long as a kid doesn't get severely hurt or hurt at all, like...
Or you could be a Tenzin and be like, no, we've done this before. We're going to smash your energy.
But the ability, the weight that lifts off of people to actually thrive when you say, you're allowed to fail. I want you to learn something from it. I want you to pull something from it. But you're allowed to mess up. You're not going to be perfect every time. You try hard enough, often enough,
you will fail.
You're going to fail.
And then it will cease to become failure.
And that's okay.
And that's awesome.
But there's so much, when we start something new, we see that failure. And I think for my advice is fail. That's okay.
Do it.
That's okay.
So the last thing that is on my mind is thinking about Raiko's reaction by blaming Korra for everything. And I really struggle with this, right? And Raiko is a politician, and so there's already some sort of tainted concept of Raiko for me as being this politician. And he starts to act more like a politician now. And this is what I mean by that is he starts to use tactics that are less savory in order to preserve his own favor with the people.
Bringing media to an event to watch Korra fail.
Exactly.
Right.
And if it succeeded, it would have benefited him because he brought the media. And if it didn't, it benefits him because he gets to chew out Korra and blame her for the things that are going wrong.
Well, and this is one of those things where he's not dumb.
No, he's playing the game.
And I'm not, and it's one of those things where one of the worst things I think we can do is hold our people who are in positions of power and give them the benefit of the doubt of saying that they're dumb, right? We can give generous assumptions, but I refuse to believe that there are certain individuals that are oblivious to something like gun violence.
Correct. Yeah.
For as long as it's been going on.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not oblivious. They're making a choice.
They're making a choice.
And often an educated,
one that
well
they think
thought
is going to
out
look
choice.
good for them
Yeah.
of the people they are trying to impress.
Yep.
And so he knows what he's doing, and he's very calculated in this moment. And
which makes it more sinister.
Correct.
Right? It only makes it more sinister.
Well, and either it's a refusal to acknowledge the part that he played in all of this, right?
Yeah.
And the decisions he made in how he engaged with the Civil War that was taking place.
Well, and it's one of those things that I wish, like, applied. The thing that Tenzin says to Korra, that, hey, you're the Avatar. Other people's opinions, like, they don't matter. Your job is to keep balance for the world, which means you can't make everybody happy, right? You have to make decisions that are beyond a vote. Whereas President Raiko is living in, like, leashed to
Approval ratings.
Yeah. And there is a danger, frankly, in having one person responsible for anything that is that big, right?
In the flag we're talking about, right? Why are we doing something that we're doing?
Yes, that's what I'm getting to and driving towards.
And so the flag is, are you doing this because you want to stay in power and win your next election?
Are you doing this because that's what's right?
Exactly. Are you doing it because it's the right thing to do? And if your flag is, I'm doing this because it's going to keep me in power, then either one, I don't really believe you deserve to be leading.
Well, I think we convince ourselves, right, that I'm good. I'm the better option. I want to do what's right for this city.
So to do that, I've got to stay in power.
So to do that, exactly. And then we fail to realize that our decision making has necessarily been changed and influenced by something that is
outside of our value system.
Altering our value system.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that is an unconscious thing that people do, right? That in order to keep my job, I have to do this thing, which goes against me and why I took this job in the first place.
Yeah,
and it leads to burnout. It leads to hating your work. It leads to all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've done that before, where I've got to do this because my job, right, is demanding this, versus like this is not something that I should do because this isn't gonna be helpful or
right.
be useful or be well welcomed, right? And so or if you know something that you can do really well, but choosing not to do it because you're worried about the fallout of this. If I do this, then I might get fired. If I do this, then I might go to jail. Andre Henry talked about this all the time, talks about this, period. But
check out his new books.
Yeah. But the reason I lift it up is one of his more recent tweets really kind of reframed the conversation for me. And this is not new, but he's like, how many white people are willing to go to jail to end racism? And for me, it was one of those things where I was like, dang, I don't know that I am. And I had to confront that for a minute. I was like, right? That's big.
Yeah.
And I had to think about, like, what are the circumstances that would make it so that I am like willing to go to jail right now and suffer the all of the real world consequences of going to jail. And in my head, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I would totally go to jail. And then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot involved in that. I'm like, oh, what about school? What about this? What about this? What about all the money that I'm spending all this way? And then I come to grips with the fact that, like, this is a thing where if the purpose behind the question is things aren't going to change unless people are willing to go to jail. And I'm like, oh, dang. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Shayu in season 1 of Atla, who is the fire sage that chooses to help Aang find Avatar Roku and go against the rest of the sages and ultimately get arrested.
Yeah,
And probably worse.
years?
We know he doesn't die because in the comics he becomes the spoiler alert. He becomes the one of the great sages
Yeah.
of the fire. But like that's not to say he wasn't tortured or worse when
Oh,
he
for
was
sure.
in captivity.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anyway, that was a long rant. But like thinking about how we are reacting to new things and
Yeah.
making sure that we are filtering our beginnings through the proper lenses of values, I think really matters.
It does. Before we end this segment, we can't not talk about Zahir.
Wow, we went a long time without talking about Zahir, didn't
Yeah.
we?
So this is it. Let's finish this segment with Zahir.
Here's my problem.
Tell me your problem.
Zahir is an exceptional airbender.
From Jump Street.
Yep.
Well, and we know he's absolutely studied airbending prior to this.
Sure. I think this is my one critique, and I won't say it again. I think it does a massive disservice to the discipline of martial arts to have someone who has studied something without literally being able to do it.
Yeah.
That is that good that fast. That has such mastery over it that quickly.
Yeah.
That's my critique.
Mastery is the main word, right? Because there's talent. There's natural talent that exists. But mastery requires more than that.
I would have really liked to have seen like a mess up or two from Zahir, like trying to like relearn how to use his bending in this scene just to make it more believable.
Yeah, because I was about to say he's been in that cell for a while, and there's a lot of time between like.
It's been what, a day since people have started that we know of?
We don't know if it's been a day or 2 days or 3 days.
Okay, maybe that's it. Okay.
We don't know the amount of time from when he has escaped.
That helps me. Maybe he's been playing with this for a few days without
And we
guards.
know that the vines have been there for 3 weeks or so, and these are just the first people who are discovering airbending. So maybe he's been in there for 3 weeks, learned it very quickly that he could.
Because he was studying it.
Because he was studying it or bored or practicing or doing
and has
forms.
been practicing for
every time.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that
there's a
that
chance.
gives me a little bit more believability.
I agree
here.
that is headcanon, right? That he's had this time to practice. Because what else are you doing in prison except for meditating, studying?
If I found out that I had that in prison, that's all I'd be
every
doing.
time the guards aren't
Right.
there.
Yeah.
But here's one of the things. So true chaos with Zahir, because we always hear that there's so much that with this new character. That like there's a lot of things he says where you're like, I'm not against that.
Yep.
And I want to kill the Avatar. Kind of against that. But also
the end of the White Lotus.
When you're talking about like I'm creating the best world or wanting a better world, leaving 3 guards or 4 guards up in a cell with very little food and water.
They said
for
3
3
weeks. They're gonna die.
Yeah. So like that's yeah.
Maybe not, but
No, probably.
they might. We'll see.
Unless you've got a waterbender who's able to like pull moisture out of the air.
I mean, we don't know. Moral of the story is this is a big beginning, right? Where Zahir has taken advantage of his new skills to escape and to pursue something that a lot of people are like, wow, I see what this person's saying. And I think that's something to take note of. And I think for us, the question is, where is the line? Right? Okay, this is something that we agree with, but where does the line get crossed? Right? And I just challenge people to set your, attunement to where that line is in his argument, because sometimes it's really hard when you encounter a new idea, when you have this beginning in your mind with something that is new but and exciting and something you really appreciate. But also, I think it's worth noting that oftentimes if we haven't processed something, we have this gut instinct in our that we've been thinking about, and our intuition says, I don't like this, but I also like this, and there's just something that says that it's a little off. That's our cue to think and to wonder and be like, okay, where, why? And I caution people when we have this beginning of something new, to think about that.
It's important to realize that you get to draw a line. You know what I mean? You get to set a boundary. Set the boundary. Draw the line. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Because so frequently we hear this slippery slope fallacy of, well, if this happens, then this happens. And if this happens, then this says. So where does it stop? It stops where you draw the line. So, like,
Well,
you get to draw a line.
and I think oftentimes in argument, people take you to the extreme, right? Um, the example I go to comes from Braving the Wilderness, Brene Brown. But it's thinking about how when you vote for a certain way, and you're like, well, I voted for, anti-abortion. And I think abortions are not good. Oh my God, you think that everybody shouldn't have a choice? That's not what I said. I said I don't think abortion is good. I want people to have a choice. I believe that abortion cannot be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe that people should have a choice of their own body, and people should have the autonomy, and people should be able to choose, right? And that men shouldn't be making choices about women's bodies, period. But like, those can be simultaneously true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with like gun laws. For instance, I believe that people should, and this is me creating a hypothetical.
Yeah.
I believe that people should have the right to own guns, and should have, as long as they are properly educated, have done the work to get licensed, have done X, Y, and Z. But people will often say, "Oh my God, does that mean you voted for the NRA?" And like, no, that's not what I said. I think that people can have responsible gun laws and not, right? And the NRA is bad. And oftentimes people conflate extremes.
Right.
And when you say something, they assume everything about your understanding of that thing based off what you said. And so, again, it's choosing curiosity over criticism here.
Yeah.
So I think that we are invited into choosing that. And those are two very politically charged conversations.
It's breaking through, and this is, again, chalk it up on the chalkboard for things we talk about. It's calling out the false binary that exists. That
Exactly.
It's either one or the other.
Exactly.
There's never an in between. It's just not the case.
Yeah.
So, anything else we want to lift up before we jump into take a quick break and then jump into our next segments?
I'm ready for a quick break.
All right, we'll be right back with more Bending Not Breaking in just a moment. What are we done?
First thing we're going to do is we have, thanks to our patrons, on a name for this next segment. We are officially going to call it Twee and La, which means this is our push and our pull. The things that push us away from this episode and the things that pull us in.
Love it.
So big thanks to our patrons for helping us settle on this segment title.
So much better than previous options.
No comment. I got outvoted. It's fine. Moral of the story is we are landing on things that we appreciate, things that were really great. And this is also a chance for us to step outside of like analytical lens and pay attention to more the writing, the music, the screenplay, the art. Don't make fun of me.
Doing great.
Anyway, we can start with wherever we like. What do you want to talk about? Being in or pushed away or being pulled in?
Yeah, I'm gonna do pushed away first. And it's not that the show did anything wrong. Anyway, I think the seeing the way that people try to on to the status quo in this show and the mob attacking Korra, and it feels very real, and it shows you how willing people like hold on to what was if they felt comfortable in that moment, regardless of what that might be doing to others. And how politicians react in the wake of tragedy is also something that feels very raw and real right now.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of emotions that are just like, it's tough to process and hit. And so I think that was just a moment for me, kind of like,
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of the good kind of push. When I say that, I mean that makes the show real and good because it's close. Not that, and you said this, but it's not that this is bad. We don't end the episode. It's that I wish it were different.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes the show good, is the fact that it's so real and it also hurts. So I appreciate that. Wow. Yeah, I mean, for me, you kind of changed my mind on my original thing that pushed me away, which was this uncanny bending immediately upon receiving the bending skills from Zahir. But you kind of convinced me that he has now this headcanon of him practicing for a week or two, which makes me have a lot more like, okay, I can buy into this now. So that was the original thing that pushed me away. I guess now I'm really thinking about just, we talked about it a lot, but just the way that people shut Boomy down in the beginning, aren't willing to hear him out and listen. And then again, it makes me sad because I understand the feeling of boy who cried wolf. I have been the boy who cried wolf, and just the desire to be taken seriously and what it feels like when people don't listen and don't believe you is really sad. So I'm just leaning into that. That kind of is a push for me.
My big pull in moment is when Tenzin is talking with his children about what it means to have new airbenders. One,
does that mean I have to live with them? Because I really like.
And I love that. I love their childlike wonder around all of this.
Yeah.
And I love that Tenzin is willing to be emotional and vulnerable in front of them. Love that.
Incredible
love
parenting
that.
right there.
Yeah, I'm all about letting kids see you cry in moments where that happens because I show emotion, right? And I love that he's, I wish your grandfather would have been able to see this, but I also love the moment of they're going to need help and all of the kids being, we're here. Like, we love just you. We love this. That moment is just such a beautiful moment. I hope.
It speaks to this, just like the wonder and beauty of children who are just like, yeah, we got this. And just the support, the natural urge for children to love.
The shared common goal, right? Everything about that I hope to create spaces where those things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I really am appreciative that he has created a family that's able to live into that and that they are willing to step up to those ways. And I even love it more later this season when we get to see them start the process of bringing and connecting and bringing in more airbenders. And
I mean, that definitely pulled me in.
Big fan of that moment.
Definitely pulled me in. Every time I watch this show, this will be a shocker to everybody, I am reminded of how much I love it. And this episode is so full of things that I love if I let myself pay attention. And love this moment where now that I have context of having seen the whole season of Korra and Asami, that I can appreciate in a whole new way. I love this moment with Tenzin that he offers Korra that says, listen, you have to make decisions where not everybody's going to be happy. There's so many things that pull me into this episode that just I am in love with it, and it's so good.
Yeah.
I love it's amazing.
Big fan. Big fan.
And then like this again, Zahir's lines at the end where like, listen, if you don't pay attention, you're gonna miss them. Bam! Here's some airbending, right? It's just, and I miss.
It's very Ferris Bueller of him.
Yeah, I just
life moves pretty fast.
Yeah, I love this show. It's so good. If that's not apparent already.
Devotion.
Devotion.
We're on to devotion.
Yeah, that means that we are tackling the lens through the element of fire. We end book 2 with Earth.
We did.
And so we are starting this season with fire.
Fire.
So,
So,
yeah, big festival. So what we're going to do is set an intention. And our intention is going to be using beginnings and using fire. And we're going to try and set an intention for this coming week. Between now and next Tuesday, we are trying to check this off of a list, if possible, and accomplish this. We can turn our thoughts and our wonderings and our musings into action.
Because that's important.
Yeah.
All this learning means nothing if we don't do something with it.
Yeah. So
you're going to be buried in a library full of sand. All the knowledge in the world.
That's if that happened. Duh. Don't you remember that? I believe you forgot.
I'm clearly referencing it. Who are you talking
to? Anyway, all right. What are you doing? What's your intention?
Yeah. So one, thinking of Survivor, fire. That's fun. And also this show.
I love Survivor.
Yeah.
All 42 seasons together.
We have. We believe very much that we would be good at the strategic gameplay aspect of it. Zero part of me wants to live in the wilderness for 33 days. I don't care. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
I mean, if somebody like asked me to do it, I would
probably be willing to, but
like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna apply.
That would. I think for me, going back to one of our earliest conversations in this episode, this idea of snuffing out the fire that is inside of others as they are starting things and new projects and things that are like, I want to be very conscious to do that. I want to make sure that I am not snuffing out that is igniting that excitement in another person. And so trying to really catch myself if I see that happening, like flag.
So what does that look like? What is that moment? Right? What is that? What happens within you that helps you like catch yourself?
I think my flag right now is going to be like when I am saying no.
Okay.
Why?
Or when you want to say
no. Or
no.
when I want to say no. Why?
Okay.
And the answer still might be no.
Yeah, sure, of course.
But
some fires need to be put out.
I think that's
like some fires are dangerous.
Correct. And so I think it is. All right, I'm saying no. That's my flag. That's my light bulb.
Yeah.
Then it's time to ask why.
That's my chance to pause.
Yep.
Right? And be like, okay, I say no, but why am I saying no?
Right.
I love that. I think.
No. That's mine. What about you?
Wow. I am thinking about Survivor also, funnily enough. Except I often like get somewhat annoyed on Survivor at how few of them know how to start a fire.
Don't go on the show.
I'm like, why did you you knew
like, and even if you didn't know you were going on it, you knew you auditioned for it.
Yeah.
So
but they also knew they were going on.
You also know that, and I don't know what the turnaround is, right? Like, if we say yes, you're going to get on a plane a week later, or 3 days later,
Maybe.
I don't know what the turnaround is, but you know that they give you coconut husk.
Yeah.
You know that they give you twigs, and you've got flint.
Yeah, moral of the story is
do it.
Let's learn how to start a fire, right? And so, and I think that one of the things that often people do is in their rush to start the fire, they do exactly what you're talking about. They smother it. Once they get that little inkling, that little spark going, and there's a small flame, smother that fire, putting a bunch of things that are either too big for it, gets smothered and doesn't catch fire, or they keep on too much things that burn too quickly that don't catch little things on fire.
Right.
And so the metaphor here for me is the slow and steady wins the race here. When I'm beginning and I'm thinking about how to start, I don't want to jump to the end and put the big log on first. Right. And I also don't want to stay in this space where I have to keep putting gasoline or the equivalent of like paper or husks.
You're going to burn out too quickly.
I'm going to burn out too quickly. Yeah. Exactly. And so how do we create a flame that is going to be sustainable?
What a cool, like, because I think that's the prep work, right? We know, like, you have not scraped enough magnesium.
Reasonable amount of time on the front end.
Right. Yeah. Because
saves you from an unreasonable amount of time on the back end.
But we know, and we're bringing someone to role, right? Or we're inviting someone into the space. Doing the prep work prior to that is important.
Yes.
Because when the flame starts, you will grow. But if you haven't scraped enough magnesium flint, if you don't have enough coconut husk there right now, so when you finally strike it, it's going to catch, and then quickly have all the next pieces ready to go.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Yep.
I think of onboarding for a job position. One of the first things you do, hopefully, this is a flag say for people going into a new job, is if there's not like a 30, 60, 90-day plan, like they say, like in the first 30 days, these are some things you should be working to accomplish. In the first 60 days, these are you should be, and they can be as little as like getting your key card to get into the building to like all like to starting forward. This project and review these things, right? Like having that is creating the environment for the fire to grow.
Yep. In
the best way possible. If you walk into a business and they're like, "I that for you," I'm sorry.
Then,
like that's not a great place.
Well, and the metaphor is like you better know how to start your own fire.
Right.
Or else. There's no
support.
But
you might not have any of the supplies you need.
Exactly.
So you've got to be the one to go find those supplies. Yep. So, like...
There's a lot there.
How are we creating the space before we get in? One of the things we talk about in inclusion, right? Oh, we want an inclusive space. Yeah. Well, what have you done on the front end to create that space?
Exactly.
So that when you actually strike the flint, that the fire can be there and be excited to be there and feel like they're... have the ability to grow.
Yeah. So the follow through action, like that's the metaphor. Is I'm starting a new job. It's a semi new job.
You've done it before, but it's been a little bit of
time. It's my summer job, and I want to make sure that as I start it, I'm not taking on too many projects. I'm not doing things that are beyond me, and I'm gonna ride this well. I'm gonna not burn by doing all the easy things and taking all the low-hanging fruit and then making it so that I'm going to regret it later on in the summer. But I'm also not going to like, I want to do this and this and this for y'all when I only have 10 weeks and I know that I'm not going to be able to burn all the way through. And so I'm being cognizant of those starting projects in the next week as I start this new job.
Yeah. Because a fire that is too big,
uncontrollable and dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're at the end. We got to give gratitude.
Yeah, but gratitude's so great.
Let's give it gratitude too.
Man, here's the problem. I want to give gratitude to everybody in this episode. I want to give gratitude to Asami, Tenzin. But I think where I'm going to land is on giving gratitude to Pema. And
she's the best.
I love Pema. And Pema, man, has to deal with Bolin talking about like the wild family she has and is dealing with all of kids and is doing all of these things, and she only gets, I think, the wine. And it's when Boomy is like, "Hey, Ben, throw a big rock at me so that I can show you that I can airbend." And she's like, "You can all you want, but you got to take it outside."
You're an adult. You can make adult decisions.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get from her.
Get out. Just do it outside.
Like, sure, go ahead, do it, but don't do it in here. and I just...
What a wonderful way to set boundaries, but not flame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Right? She's not saying, shut up, Boomy. She's not saying, don't do this anymore. She's saying, just do it out there because what's in here needs to be clean and safe for my children.
Yeah.
Right? So I really appreciate Pema and found that I think, one, underappreciated, 2, this moment was one that I remember and I really appreciate. So
Yeah.
grateful for Pema. How about you?
Do we ever get the shopkeeper's brother's name?
Ooh.
I'll look it up later, but
yes, I think
if you find it, let me know. But mine, I think one, we can see an experience in that moment that is very familiar to us as viewers. This idea of fear of harming someone, fear of not being good, fear of failure. And I just, the fact that we get to see him experience those things and very rawly experience those things while still seeing, like, he apologizes to Mako after knocking him over. Like, this is a person who truly wants to do what's good for other people. I greatly appreciate them for showing us that those are real emotions and real things that happen, and so just very grateful for them and their existence, because I think it's important to know that, like, we're not alone when we feel those things, and I think that's a really important takeaway.
Yeah. Just for reference, the shopkeeper is a shopkeeper.
Okay.
And the airbending brother is Daw.
Daw.
D-A-W.
That's right. He does give his name.
Yep.
To Tenzin.
Yep.
And Tenzin comes afterwards, and again, but I think there's so much power in understanding that we're not alone, and I'm grateful for him showing us that.
Hear, hear. Wow.
Episode 1 in the book.
Man.
What a good episode.
And we got some guests coming your way.
Excited for all of it.
May not be episode 2. We'll see.
So here's what
working on it.
Here's what you can do. Us on all the socials. If you don't, BNB_pod. TikTok, which is a lot of Star Wars content.
Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
Facebook. We go live with our patrons once a month, which is really fun. We've really enjoyed those conversations.
Yeah,
we're currently starting book 2 with them. So we just did the episode of book 2.
We did the Avatar
The Last Airbender, and so we're jumping into the next one. So if that's a conversation you're excited about.
Cave of Two Lovers soon. We have the
Blind Bandit
coming up.
There's
a lot of great episodes.
Yeah, season 2 is great. Season 2 is great. Serpent's Pass.
Yeah, all the good things.
A lot of fun.
Zuko.
Yeah, we can just keep naming.
Yeah,
them.
we could just
Let's
name all the episodes.
Phil.
Yeah.
So, but if you want to check this out there, I mean, yeah, Patreon is a great place to do that. That also allows us to keep doing what we're doing, which is this podcast.
That's right.
If being a patron is not something that you are able to do right now, simple reviews,
makes
follows,
such a big
subscribes,
difference.
all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
I just want to say we haven't had a review for a while, and so that really makes a difference for just the algorithm of being seen, and so that would be an amazing gift to us to do that.
Yeah, well, it's been a fun time. We will be back next week.
Woo!
I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And this is Ben.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.
You just gotta have the laugh.